Hi guys, okay, thank you for picking this up again. I need to invest in paying for the full screen record, I think, because it's very annoying, isn't it, these 15-minute bursts. Okay, so we were writing an essay together. We'd already done the introduction. I've now taken that off the page and I've got a bit more space. We've given an overview of how Shakespeare introduces Macbeth at the beginning of the play and set out a few more ideas about it, but we're getting on to writing about a textual detail, because as I said to you in the last video, we can't get high marks until we're talking about specific details in the text. So Macbeth, shortly after murdering Duncan, tells the audience Macbeth does murder sleep, which leads the audience to infer that he feels a sense of guilt and regret. So we've introduced a quotation, a line from the play, and we've said something about what it reveals about Macbeth's state of mind. Now we can go deeper. We can start thinking about the symbolism of the language, the imagery. And obviously we talked in the last session about the idea of sleep. Sleep, you can't murder sleep, can you? Because it's not a physical thing. But what Macbeth is suggesting is that he's murdered peace. Sleep is a time of peace when we are able to kind of rejuvenate, we're able to escape from the toil and traumas of daily life. But for Macbeth, he appreciates you can never have that. He can never find that peace. So we can use this phrasing in particular, which helps us then to zoom in on a word. The use of the word sleep is significant because we associate sleep as a time of peace when we can escape the troubles of daily life. In addition, it is a time of rejuvenation. It seems that Macbeth is immediately aware that a consequence, and I'm putting that word in there on purpose because obviously that's the key word in the question, consequences, so I'm making sure I get the word in there. It seems that Macbeth is immediately aware that a consequence of his choice to murder the king is that he will never find peace again, and he cannot re-find his identity as a loyal soldier. So we've now developed a line of analysis. Let's have a quick read to make sure that actually makes sense. Macbeth, shortly after murdering Duncan, tells the audience Macbeth does murder sleep, which leads the audience to infer that he feels a sense of guilt and regret. In particular, the use of the word sleep is significant because let's get rid of that it, I don't know how that got in there, because we associate sleep as a time of peace when we can escape the troubles of daily life. In addition, it's a time of rejuvenation. It seems that Macbeth is immediately aware that a consequence of his choice to murder the king is that he will never find peace again, and he cannot re-find his identity as a loyal soldier. And we could say a little bit more about that, couldn't we? Because obviously it's the fact that he uses the word murder. So he's murdered Duncan, but in a sense, he's destroyed part of himself, hasn't he? And that's the key idea here, when he's murdered not only Duncan, but also an essential aspect of who he was. So we can develop another line of analysis. We can use the word one, which sounds a bit pretentious, but it's an academic essay. So one can also interpret, or one can also draw the conclusion, draw the conclusion that Macbeth feels that he has not only physically murdered Duncan, but by doing so has metaphorically destroyed a part of himself. So we can kind of go even a bit bigger. We can always think about what we can develop and say about language rather than just being happy we've said something and we want to move on. Lastly then, the last part of this paragraph is again going to be going bigger. So I always want to try to end paragraphs with instead of writing about the character, because obviously up till now we've been writing about Macbeth and how he feels, the last sentence can kind of forget Macbeth a bit and think about, is there a bigger message for humanity or society through this language? And again, this is where we use our tentative intent sentence. So we start with, it seems that, and we will vary some of this phrasing once you get used to it. I just want you to have a set bank of structure to work with, and then we can evolve the sophistication with time. So it seems that Shakespeare included this detail in order to, and that is the way you can phrase every last sentence of an analytical paragraph. It seems that Shakespeare included this detail in order to. And now the key thing is we don't want to talk about what it reveals about Macbeth, but what message we can take to it as a bigger sort of social message. So it seems that Shakespeare included this detail in order to warn the audience that consequences of evil acts are immediate and inescapable. He seems, by he I mean Shakespeare, to suggest that by making evil choices, people destroy an essential part of themselves. Okay, so notice with that sentence, I haven't talked about Macbeth at all, and it's much more conceptual. I find that sentence more difficult to write because I'm talking about kind of conceptual ideas about human nature and how we live our lives rather than the character. So if we look at our analytical paragraph, and we can read it over, Macbeth, shortly after murdering Duncan, tells the audience Macbeth does murder sleep, which leads the audience to infer that he feels a sense of guilt and regret. In particular, the use of the word sleep is significant because we associate sleep as a time of peace when we can escape the troubles of daily life. In addition, it is a time of rejuvenation. It seems that Macbeth is immediately aware that a consequence of his choice to murder the king is that he will never find peace again, and he cannot re-find his identity as a loyal soldier. One can also draw the conclusion that Macbeth feels that he has not only physically murdered Duncan, but by doing so has metaphorically destroyed a part of himself. It seems that Shakespeare included this detail in order to warn the audience that the consequences of evil acts are immediate and inescapable. He seems to suggest that by making evil choices, people destroy an essential part of themselves. Okay guys, so what I'd like you to have a go at, if you feel confident to, is writing another paragraph. So your paragraph is going to start with, later in the play, the consequences continue to grow for Macbeth. So we've got a nice cohesive link to show that you're going to move forward and you're going to talk about another line. And I would suggest that you write about the "full of scorpions is my mind" line, because that conveys, doesn't it, the consequences on Macbeth. And obviously that metaphorical image of a scorpion has lots of different connotations you can talk about. It's a real lovely line in that way. And I know you will have studied it in class with your teacher. So later in the play, the consequences to continue to grow for Macbeth. The next sentence you need to write needs to start with a tentative phrase, it seems that, followed by the author's surname, Shakespeare. Oh, no, sorry. Sorry, I got that wrong, didn't I? So later, we're going to introduce a quotation, not a tentative phrase. So we're going to start with the name of the character who says the line. So obviously Macbeth says the line, then you say when he said it, then you give the detail and you say what you can infer. Then obviously in particular and a tentative sentence to finish. Sorry if there's a little confusion there. So if I start writing a bit for anyone who's stuck, if you're confident you can give a paragraph a go, stop the video now and have a go at it. If you're not, I'll start the process with you. So later in the play, the consequences continue to grow for Macbeth. Macbeth, after ordering the murder of Banquo, so that's our little when bit, tells Lady Macbeth And in my quote mark, full of scorpions is my mind, quotation mark. So we've got our sentence which links one paragraph to another, because we don't want our essay just to jump all over the place. We've introduced the line, and so now we can do the infer bit, which leads the audience to infer. Now I'm not going to do that little bit for you, because you can obviously do that yourself in a minute. Remember what I said to you with the infer section. We don't want to go into too much detail. We want to just say what we can work out about Macbeth's state of mind and how he's feeling. Once you've done that, you then start with the words in particular, the word, and then pick one word from that line that we've already written about to say more about. And obviously scorpions is the big one here. The metaphor of the scorpions is the key word. Then we would say is significant because, and obviously you can explain why it's significant. Remember what I did with my paragraph? I kept trying to dig into it rather than just saying one thing. I tried to develop lines for analysis. And then lastly, your final sentence is going to say, it seems that Shakespeare included this detail in order to, and then you can explain why. So even though I've put those sentences separate, they would all be one paragraph in together. Okay, give it a go, guys, if you can. We'll be practicing a lot more. I don't expect you to watch me do it once and then suddenly know how to do it. If you have a go at it, please email it to your English teacher. Don't email everything to me unless I am your English teacher, because I won't be able to respond if I receive hundreds of paragraphs. But your English teacher knows to expect, they know what you're doing, they know to expect the work. Thank you very much for listening to this. My voice is a bit croaky, so apologies for that. And the next session will be on, ready for the next lesson.